Chapter 3. The distant voices echoed through the vast underground chamber, drawing me forward with a mix of curiosity and trepidation. I crouched low, clutching the rusted pipe I had scavenged earlier, a crude weapon, but better than facing the unknown unarmed. The cold, rough surface bit into my palms, a reminder of the harsh reality I was about to confront. Moving cautiously from one pile of debris to another, I used the scattered remnants of collapsed walls and ceilings as cover. The air grew heavier as I approached the source of the voices, carrying a strange metallic scent that tickled my nostrils. It was unlike anything I had encountered before, even in the toxic wastelands above. The voices grew clearer, but their language remained unintelligible. It was unlike any I had heard in the markets or among the scattered communities of survivors. An odd, almost musical quality permeated their speech, reminiscent of the strange melodies Mother sometimes emitted in her sleep. Peering out from behind a large chunk of concrete, I finally caught sight of the speakers. My breath caught in my throat. A group of 10 figures sat in a rough circle, their appearance so startling that I briefly wondered if the toxic air had finally addled my brain. 5 of the group wore elaborate robes with intricate patterns woven into fabric that shimmered in the dim light. The other 5 stood at attention, their posture rigid and alert. These figures wore simpler garments, but each carried a wickedly sharp blade at their hip. Guards, I realized, though their weapons looked more ceremonial than practical. Their features captivated me. Golden brown skin glowed with an inner light, contrasting sharply with the dull, ashen complexions I was accustomed to seeing. Their large, luminous eyes, with oversized pupils, swept the area with an otherworldly grace. Most striking were their ears, delicately pointed at the tips, giving them an almost elven appearance. With a jolt, I realized what I was witnessing. These were the new people, the mysterious beings whispered about in the markets, beings who could survive in areas that would kill a normal human within days, beings that some claimed had strange abilities, powers beyond our comprehension. A figure lay in the center of the circle, tightly wrapped, only its head visible from my vantage point. Whether it was alive or dead, I couldn't tell. The body remained motionless, offering no indication of life. The chamber itself pulsed with an otherworldly energy. The walls glistened with a thin sheen of moisture, reflecting the soft glow emanating from the strange tree at the center. Shadows danced along the curved ceiling, cast by the flickering light of bioluminescent fungi clinging to the rocky outcrops. The air was thick with a mix of scents. The familiar musty odor of the underground, the sharp tang of the metallic smell I had noticed earlier, and something new, a sweet, almost floral fragrance wafted from the direction of the tree, subtle yet enticing. As I watched, transfixed, one of the robed figures leaned forward, their hand hovering over the wrapped body. Their lips moved, forming words I couldn't understand, but the cadence suggested some sort of ritual or prayer. The others in the circle bowed their heads, their expressions a mix of reverence and concern. The guards remained vigilant, their eyes constantly scanning the chamber. One of them turned in my direction, and I ducked back behind the concrete, my heart pounding. Had I been spotted? I held my breath, counting the seconds, but no alarm was raised. When I dared to look again, a new figure was descending from the glowing tree that dominated the chamber. This newcomer moved with a fluid grace that set them apart even from the other new people. In one hand, they carried a knife that gleamed with an unnatural light. In the other, they held what at first glance appeared to be a fruit, but unlike any I had ever seen. The fruit was roughly the size and shape of a pomegranate, but that was where the similarities ended. Its skin was a vibrant, almost neon purple that pulsed with its own inner light. As the robed figure approached the circle, the fruit seemed to throb in time with the strange, resonant hum that permeated the chamber. The tension in the air was palpable as the newcomer joined the circle. Whatever was about to happen, it was clear that it held great significance for these beings, and I, hidden in the shadows, was about to witness it all. The newcomer spoke, their voice rising and falling in a cadence that, while unintelligible to me, clearly held great importance for the assembled group. The guards straightened, their hands moving to the hilts of their blades. Those seated leaned forward, their large, luminous eyes fixed on the fruit. With a swift, practiced motion, the robed figure used the knife to slice open the purple fruit. The blade parted the skin with surprising ease, releasing a burst of luminescent juice that hung in the air for a moment before falling. A wave of scent washed over me, sweet and complex, with notes I couldn't begin to identify. It reminded me of Mother's alien fragrance, but more intense, almost intoxicating. The figure moved to the wrapped body in the center of the circle. With gentle movements, they tilted the head back. The dim light caught the wrapped figure's face, revealing golden skin stretched tight over sharp cheekbones. Its eyes were closed, lips parted slightly. Carefully, the robed figure allowed the glowing juice to drip into the partially opened mouth. This process was repeated several times, each application followed by a careful massaging of the throat to encourage swallowing. The other new people watched intently, their expressions a mix of hope and apprehension. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. The chamber fell silent, save for the ever-present hum of the tree. Then suddenly, a violent coughing broke the silence. The body convulsed, struggling against its bindings. The sound echoed off the chamber walls, startlingly loud after the previous quiet. In an instant, the circle erupted into action. Hands moved swiftly to cut away the wrappings, freeing the golden-skinned figure within. As the bindings fell away, I could see that the figure was male, his body emaciated and covered in strange, glowing markings. The robed figure who had administered the fruit now cradled the gasping individual, urging him to consume more. At first, the sickly person resisted, turning his head away. But then, as if suddenly gripped by an insatiable hunger, he began to devour the fruit with alarming speed. Juice ran down his chin, staining his golden skin with streaks of glowing purple. As he ate, a change came over him. The glowing markings on his skin began to fade, and his sunken cheeks filled out. It was as if I was watching months of healing happen in mere moments. The other new people murmured among themselves, their musical language taking on a tone of excitement. One of the guards stepped forward, kneeling beside the revived figure. He spoke softly, his words unintelligible to me but clearly comforting to the other. As I watched this bizarre scene unfold, my mind raced with questions. What was this fruit? How could it heal so quickly? And if it could do this for one of the new people, what might it do for Mother? The revived figure was now sitting up on his own, looking around with wide, confused eyes. He spoke, his voice raspy, but growing stronger with each word. The others responded, their tones soothing and reassuring. The new people helped him to his feet, supporting him as he took his first shaky steps. His movements became more sure with each passing moment, the fruit's effects seemingly still at work. As they began to move toward a tunnel on the far side of the chamber, I pressed myself further into the shadows. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear at nearly being discovered and excitement at what I had witnessed. Once I was certain they were gone, I emerged from my hiding place. The chamber felt different now, emptier, yet somehow more alive. The glowing tree pulsed with an inner light, its roots writhing slowly across the ground. I gave them a wide berth, remembering the piles of bones I'd seen earlier. My attention was drawn to the discarded remnants of the fruit used in the ritual. Fragments of the vibrant purple skin lay scattered on the ground, still faintly glowing. An idea began to form in my mind, equal parts thrilling and terrifying. I crouched down, picking up a piece of the discarded fruit skin and bringing it to my nose. The scent was even more intoxicating up close, sweet and complex, with an underlying note that reminded me of Mother's alien fragrance. My fingers tingled where they touched the glowing fragment. Without fully considering the consequences, I slipped the fruit fragments into the small satchel I carried for scavenging. The weight of them against my hip felt significant, as if I was carrying something far more valuable than mere scraps. My eyes were drawn back to the tree. Now that I was closer, I could see that what I had initially taken for knots in the trunk were actually crude pegs, driven deep into the wood to form a makeshift ladder. The pegs were made of a material I couldn't identify. Not quite metal, not quite wood, with a faint luminescence of their own. Following the twisting branches upward, I spotted clusters of the glowing purple fruits nestled among the luminescent leaves. They pulsed with an inner light, almost as if they had a heartbeat of their own. The longer I stared, the more they seemed to call to me. A plan began to form in my mind, both thrilling and terrifying. If this fruit could heal, or at least help, a sick humanoid like the new people, could it do the same for Mother? The rational part of my brain screamed that this was foolish, dangerous, but the part of me that had watched Mother grow weaker day by day, that had felt the crushing weight of helplessness, silenced those doubts. I approached the base of the tree cautiously, wary of the writhing roots. Up close, the bark was unlike anything I'd seen before. It shimmered with an iridescent quality, patterns swirling across its surface like oil on water. The air around the tree felt charged, almost electric. Placing my hand on the first peg, I was surprised by its warmth. It felt alive under my touch, pulsing gently in time with the tree's inner light. For a moment I hesitated. Was I really going to climb this alien tree, steal its fruit, all on the slim hope that it might help Mother? The image of Mother's pale, weakening form flashed through my mind, her iridescent eyes growing dimmer each day, the labored sound of her breathing. I gritted my teeth and began to climb. Each movement upward brought me closer to the clusters of glowing fruit, their pulsing light growing more hypnotic the nearer I got. The pegs were surprisingly sturdy under my weight, though they seemed to shift slightly with each grip, as if adjusting to my touch. The air thickened as I ascended, charged with an energy I couldn't quite explain. It reminded me of the feeling in the air just before a radiation storm, but instead of dread, it filled me with an odd sense of anticipation. My skin tingled, the hairs on my arms standing on end. Halfway up, I paused to catch my breath. Looking down, I was struck by how far I'd climbed. The chamber floor seemed distant, the shadows deeper from this vantage point. The hum of the tree was louder here, reverberating through my body. A soft rustling above me caught my attention. One of the fruit-laden branches had lowered itself, as if offering its bounty. The fruits seemed even more vibrant up close, their purple skin almost translucent, revealing the glowing seeds within. With trembling hands, I reached for the nearest fruit. My fingers brushed its surface and a jolt of energy raced up my arm. For a split second, I felt connected to something vast and ancient, a consciousness far beyond my understanding. Then the sensation faded, leaving me dizzy and breathless. Shaking off the strange feeling, I plucked the fruit from its stem. For a moment, I feared some kind of retaliation from the tree, but nothing happened. Emboldened, I reached for another and another. Each fruit I harvested went into my satchel, the bag growing heavier with each addition. As I worked, I lost track of time. The rhythmic process of reach, pluck, store became almost meditative. It wasn't until my satchel was straining at the seams that I realized I had collected 7 of the strange fruits. The weight of them was reassuring, a promise of hope for Mother. Satisfied with my haul, I began the descent, my heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and fear. What I was doing was theft, plain and simple. If caught, I doubted the new people would show mercy, no matter how desperate my reasons. But for Mother, I was willing to take the risk. My feet touched the ground, and the full weight of what I'd done hit me. The satchel at my hip felt impossibly heavy, laden with stolen treasures from an otherworldly tree. The chamber seemed different now, the shadows deeper, the tree's pulsing light more ominous than mesmerizing. Relief at being back on solid ground was short-lived. As I stepped away from the tree, my foot caught on one of its writhing roots. Pain shot through my leg as the root's sharp edge sliced into my flesh. I stumbled backward, warm blood seeping from the wound and staining my tattered pants. To my horror, the root I had stepped on began to move with more purpose, reaching towards the drops of blood I had spilled. The movement was deliberate, almost hungry. I scrambled away, my injured leg protesting with each movement. The root stretched, quivering, as if trying to extend its reach. Finally, I reached a pile of debris far enough from the tree's grasping roots to feel safe. Leaning against a chunk of broken concrete, I examined my wound. The cut was deep, running from my ankle halfway up my calf. Blood oozed steadily, mixing with the ever-present grime of the underground. I tore strips from my already tattered shirt, wincing as I bound the wound tightly. The makeshift bandage quickly turned dark with blood, but it would have to do. As I worked, I kept a wary eye on the tree. Its roots had settled back into their previous slow writhing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they, and the tree itself, were somehow aware of my presence. The scent of the fruits in my satchel filled the air around me, sweet and alien. My stomach growled, a sharp reminder that I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten. The fruit's allure was strong, promising not just sustenance but something more. A realization dawned on me, cutting through the haze of pain and hunger. If I intended to give this fruit to Mother, I needed to know if it was safe. The new people had used it in their ritual, true, but they were different, evolved or changed in ways I didn't understand. What if the fruit that healed them was poison to someone like Mother or me? There was only one way to find out. With a mix of trepidation and curiosity, I reached into my satchel and withdrew one of the glowing fruits. It felt warm in my hand, almost alive. Up close, I could see that its skin was covered in tiny, intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as I watched. They reminded me of the strange symbols Mother sometimes traced in the air when she thought I wasn't looking. My mouth watered as I began to peel it open, the scent growing stronger with each layer I removed. Inside, the fruit was filled with translucent purple seeds suspended in a glowing liquid. It was both familiar and utterly alien, like a pomegranate from some strange, otherworldly garden. For a moment, I hesitated. Was I really going to eat something I had just stolen from a group of mysterious beings in an underground cavern? Every survival instinct I had developed in the harsh world above screamed that this was a bad idea. But the gnawing hunger in my stomach and the memory of Mother's weakening condition steeled my resolve. If there was even a chance this fruit could help her, I had to know. And the only way to know was to try it myself. I raised the fruit to my lips, its glow illuminating my dirty, scarred hands. The sweet scent was overwhelming now, making my head spin. With a deep breath, I took my first bite. The taste was indescribable, sweet and tart and somehow electric. It was as if I could feel each individual taste bud coming alive. The juice ran down my chin as I devoured the fruit, unable to stop myself once I had started. Each bite sent a jolt through my body, a burst of energy unlike anything I had ever experienced. At first, I felt nothing beyond the satisfaction of a meal. But then, gradually, a warmth began to spread through my body. It started in my core and radiated outward, focusing particularly on the areas where I had been injured. The sensation grew, becoming almost unbearable around my wounded leg. I watched in amazement as the gash on my leg began to close before my eyes. The bleeding stopped, and a scab formed with unnatural speed. The pain receded, replaced by a tingling sensation that was not entirely unpleasant. Even the older scars on my hands seemed to fade slightly, the skin smoothing out. Experimentally, I stretched my leg. While not completely healed, the improvement was remarkable. The wounds on my back, too, felt less painful, the skin less tight and inflamed. I took a deep breath, noticing that the stuffy feeling in my chest, a constant companion in the toxic world above, had eased. My senses seemed sharper. The dim light of the cavern was suddenly clearer, revealing details I hadn't noticed before. Faint bioluminescent patterns on the walls, the subtle movements of air currents carrying unfamiliar scents. I could hear the distant drip of water echoing through the tunnels, and underneath it all, a low hum that seemed to resonate with something inside me. Excitement coursed through me, tempered by a newfound clarity of thought. This was exactly what I had hoped for, exactly what Mother needed. With 6 fruits left in my satchel, I allowed myself to imagine a future where Mother was healthy again, where we could leave this dangerous place and find somewhere safe. But as the initial euphoria of my discovery faded, reality began to set in. I was still deep underground, in unknown territory. The new people could return at any moment. I needed to find my way back to the surface, back to Mother, before my absence was noticed or the fruit's effects wore off. With renewed determination, I gathered my belongings and the precious fruits. As I made my way back toward the tunnel I had entered through, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The shadows seemed to move at the corners of my vision, and the ever-present hum of the cavern had taken on a more ominous tone. I quickened my pace, my partially healed leg protesting but holding. The tunnel entrance loomed ahead, a dark maw leading back to the world I knew. Just as I reached it, a sound behind me made me freeze. It was faint, barely perceptible, the soft scrape of something moving across stone. Slowly I turned. The chamber appeared empty, the tree pulsing gently in the center. But there, in the shadows near its base, I caught a flicker of movement. A root, thicker than the others, was extending toward me. As I watched, frozen in place, it seemed to sniff the air, searching. My heart pounded in my chest. Had the tree sensed the fruit I'd eaten? Was it aware of the others in my satchel? I took a step back, then another, moving as quietly as I could toward the tunnel entrance. The root paused in its advance, swaying slightly as if uncertain. Then, with a speed I wouldn't have thought possible, it surged forward. I turned and ran, plunging into the darkness of the tunnel. Behind me, I heard a sound like wood scraping against stone, the tree's roots pursuing me. Adrenaline and the lingering effects of the fruit lent me speed. I raced through the twisting passages, relying more on instinct than sight to guide me. The sounds of pursuit faded, but I didn't slow down. Whatever consequences my actions might bring, they were a problem for later. Right now, all that mattered was getting back to Mother with my miraculous find. As I ran, dodging obstacles and leaping over small chasms, a part of me wondered if I would ever see that otherworldly chamber again, or if I would want to. The image of the grasping root was seared into my mind, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in this strange underground world. Finally, I saw a faint light ahead, the manhole cover I had entered through, what felt like a lifetime ago. With a final burst of speed, I reached it, my fingers scrabbling at the heavy metal. As I pushed it aside and emerged into the toxic twilight of the surface world, I allowed myself a moment of relief. I had made it. I was alive, and in my satchel I carried hope for Mother's salvation.
Lost will never know. Silent tears, courage high, pushing to reach